What should we do with the movies, Star Trek? Today on Trekland Tuesdays Live, number 279, with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you right here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 for some sanity, clarity, and the big picture and all things Star Trek. Also, the home, be waiting for it, coming in November of our 7th anniversary Portal 47 open house. The open house that's open to all with an extra special guest. The way we do all year long, this one's open to the public. You just have to grab your seat. More details will be coming on that. When we have a guest, we'll have a date. It'll be mid-November now. I can't wait. We've had so many great guests in the past. And if you're on the cruise coming up, the day before or the day after you disembark or embark, I'm offering a special edition of our Trekland Trucks LA Away Days, the set schedule, not customized, but set schedule. I can take up to 18 people each day in a set. Just go to LarryNemecek.com and find out all about it. You can click on the link. Same as, that was February. In July next year, Terrace Cassidy at Geek Nation Tours and I are offering for the first time since 2016 a big multi-day West Coast away mission. LA and San Francisco this time. That's in July. Click over at geeknationtours.com or LarryNemecek.com and find out all about that. But that's coming next year because, my gosh, it's October. We're barreling along. We're almost to the end of Lower Decks. Prodigy's long delayed back end of first season, which started off as their second season before Prodigy was clumped into 20-episode seasons. That may be a Nickelodeon thing, by the way. All of that to say, it dawned on me this week as we're just kind of humming. What should we do with the movie Star Trek? Because look, we've had several small stories kind of percolate up. And I'm saying this because I know right now everybody is so focused on the TV series. No one's even caring. I mean, there's a little Sturm and Drang going along with the melodrama of the movies. We've talked about this in little slices along the last few weeks, last few months. I thought maybe it was a good week to maybe get our arms on the story so far. The first question about the movies is, where are they? And why are they not on Paramount Plus? I heard a professional opinion this last weekend. I was actually out in a rare mixing of public people. And I was talking about, the old, they had contracts previously written. But the bigger insight to take away, it wasn't just, oh, darn, we signed this piece of paper 3 years ago. It's more a case of they can make more money elsewhere than they can on Paramount Plus. And that's only to say, because Paramount Plus is still a baby streamer that's gaining more eyeballs, but compared to Netflix or Prime, especially I think they're all on Prime, they can make more money for the corporation than they can on the corporation's own youthful, I've said this before. I really want to help Instagram grow, even though it's Facebook, I know, but it's the audience on Instagram feels more kindred than it does on Facebook. Facebook's just been around for 12 years, even with its ickiness. But if I try to grow the audience on Instagram, if I go live unannounced, I might have, depending on time of day, I might have 5 or 10 or 20 people versus my same account going live on Facebook unannounced. I would probably right off the bat have 20, 30, 40, 50 people. It's a little bit that same dynamic. I really want to grow this, but how hard is it to drag people over there? Because sci-fi and Star Trek, aside from cosplay, and maybe occasionally a model, but no, not even the model builders. Outside of cosplay, the sci-fi world, the Trek world is not big time on Instagram yet. But it's not that same way. That's what they're facing. They're sitting there. We've got our movies. We want to grow this, but do we waste them over here when we could make more money over here while our baby platform that we control is growing? We just had New York Comic Con and the Next Gen cast say, oh, I'd like a movie. We could do one more movie now. We all survived the pandemic. We could probably do a movie on top of this. We had so much fun. Okay, but I'm just remembering also this week, we just had a sidebar. I love how whole interviews, whole articles on the web come out of sidebars that were a piece of a larger interview for somewhere else. But the two original writers of the Chris Helmsworth Star Trek 4 movie, Arabic number 4, right? J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay finally gave a big spoiler about what their script would have been with the reunion of George Kirk and his son James, Kelvin. Although, when you stop and think about it, most of George Kirk's life was Prime because the Kelvin didn't start until he lost his ship. So, in one hand, a George and James Kirk team up would have been insightful into George's background. There would have been a lot of canonized background there. So, yeah, they in the sidebar, they say it's like Indiana Jones and Last Crusade, right? Where it's Indy and his dad, Sean Connery and Shakari and Harrison Ford teamed up. The Last Crusade. So they're talking about somehow finding a time bendy-wendy thing to get JT and his dad together. Their device of choice, as they reveal, would have been basically a spiffed up big budget version of Scotty's transporter loop from Relics. In fact, they even call out TNG Relics. So good on them for being enough Trek fan to know. I'd like to talk to them someday, even as they move on to Rings of Power here and everything. And they've gone small screen and given up on the big screen blockbusters for now. This whole notion of what if George Kirk had beamed himself over to his wife's shuttle at the very last second before the ship, when Willona was giving birth to James T. In the Kelvin, as the Kelvin timeline split itself off. That was the conceit of that. He beamed himself over, been stuck in a transporter loop, still presumed dead, still presumed James T. grew up punky without his dad and all that. But then they're reunited and they're off on some adventure. Well, just on its own, on one hand, you can react to that like, well, that's about as derivative as having little swarm ships attack the Enterprise and beyond, and everybody slapping themselves on the back while some of us are saying, wait, wasn't that like a third season Voyager episode? What's so original about that? Of course, it's the execution, it's the money spent, it's the different characters, but it wasn't the most original idea in the world. It was cool, and for everybody that didn't watch Voyager, and there are many millions, it was probably new. But there you go. You're starting off with just a big budget blown up version of that. Now, that's only the initial inciting incident. You're off and running from there with a 7/8 of a plot. So, okay. And where do you leave it at the end of that movie? Does dad go back away? Does son come? What happens? But once again, it's been far enough along, all of 3 or 4 years now, that they feel safe enough in thinking, well, this is going to be sideline. Apparently, they haven't heard of the novelization comic graphic novel treatment that it might still be in for as a what if. But again, the idea of the movie is back. And of course, we had a month or two ago, we had all the hoo-ha about the hoo-ha that no one cared about Star Trek 4, actually Arabic 4, being taken off the release calendar because real world events. Chris Pine's directing and is going to be busy at the time they would have been prepping that movie. Everybody else is Carl Urban. They're talking about who's too busy to shoot already. Even as the entire Kelvin cast talks about wanting to be involved. Well, of course they do. So it's just an uphill slog to do that. This is what you get when you have a movie franchise with actors who are busy doing other projects, none of which Star Trek is, for all of them anyway, is the top-notch franchise. Other things are a bigger demand on their time and their clout rating, their IMDb star meter. But once again, you get a movie, and then I still go back to this. Brian Robbins, who is the head now of the restitched, remerged, reglued Paramount CBS, Paramount Global, Viacom, whatever that's going by this month. But the old original corporation, as they restitch and get back together, and people figure out their turf and who's doing what and who's got, is Alex Kurtzman going to Rick Berman it and be able to do movies? Is JJ still got a movie deal? He's, at least as far as last fall, the story that didn't get a lot of play. I did 1 or 2 Tuesday live about it. And some of you may remember this, but it was last October. Brian Robbins talking about who came out of animation, who was there when Prodigy was greenlit, much less, much less lower decks, but a special kinship to Prodigy and for kids, talking about, yeah, we've got Alex over here with the TV side, we've got JJ on the movie side, fertile ground, fertile teams of people, and we saw the confusing array of movie scripts optioned from at least 3 or 4 people over 3 or 4 years, a couple of them at the same time. And some of that's just the confusion of restitching this corporation back, the remerging. But Brian Robbins talked last October about, yes, we need to sort it out on the live action side. Meanwhile, what is wrong with pulling a animation live action big screen feature? Not live action, big screen. Talking about doing the same thing that SpongeBob did, jumping out with a movie, which does not hurt the series. It's not the same ego and dynamic, and maybe even this has changed, but the traditional dynamic of once you take a TV cast to the screen, which is something Star Trek pioneered in the first place, once you do that, you don't go back. They're there. Not so with animated characters, as SpongeBob has demonstrated, as we may have a few more examples of. They're talking about having, while that happens, have a big screen that you can get kids in to see. Have it be a big screen that totally new fans have no clue about, but they go to see it for the aw shucks because it's kids, the gee whiz, and you've made a ton of new fans through the back door for Prodigy and then all of Star Trek and their parents. But what's interesting is that's a movie idea. The TNG cast are throwing their hat in the ring. I mean, there's all kinds of ideas. The Star Trek realm is so big now. We've got so many former casts and so many actors who are popular, who either could maybe lead a small budget feature or can Star Trek movies only be big budget blockbusters? So they have to compete with Marvel and Star Wars? Can we have a small Star Trek movie, or is that going to always be the realm of cinematic TV? If it's going to be a small movie, then it needs to be on streaming. I mean, part of this is we're in a flexi period. But really what's happening now, and I'm sure they're racing to do this. Nobody liked yanking the Star Trek 4 start date from September next year. I mean, the premiere date, the drop date, the opening day. Nobody liked that delay, but it really points up right now, unless there's all kinds of extreme think tanking going on that's all done and they're just not sharing it with us. But it appears to be right now, especially with the Kurtzman TV series driving so much conversation and hopefully profits on the small screen side. I hate to even call it TV because people are streaming on their 60-inch plasmas. But it really brings to mind that's dry. It's almost like what's going on with the movies can be a luxury. Now, it can be the luxury that you've got to get back to, but it's not a life and death situation. Thank God we have the small screen streaming series, and that the world, Star Trek and the world's impression of it is not hanging by a thread over the drama of the next movie and when it's going to time out. So I don't know. This is, I have no magic answers. And I obviously have no magic insight. Obviously, the studio has no magic insight, and it appears that things are still being hashed out. It looks like we're in a very flexy time. The TV train is carrying us down this road, and that's pretty good for our attention spans. We've got supposedly 50 of the 52 weeks a year, we've got fresh Trek, and that's not even assuming overlaps. So we got plenty to keep us busy and occupied, and keep a lot of creatives working, and a lot of actors working. But at some point, there's got to be a movie strategy. Maybe there will be, as Brian Robbins said, maybe there'll be a dual track movie strategy. Again, do we have to think in 1940s terms, much less 1980s terms, 90s? I mean, before there was the term, Star Trek was doing the cinematic universe. We had 2 series and a movie at the same time of different subject matter. Pioneered all this shit before everybody else took up the mantle. Long before Star Wars did, and even before MCU. So we can get back to that, but even our movie track doesn't have to be single tracks. It can be a whole yard, a whole depot yard, getting into the train talk here. My My dream team, which won't happen. I say it won't happen given the landscape of movie business, but things have been it's been a very subversively uprooting time right now. A lot of paradigms, a lot of the way things are done has gone out the window on TV, especially. I know the pandemic's done that, and the coming of cinematic TV the wall is down. The wall between Mr. Paramount, tear down this wall between TV and movies, and we've got nobody mind. Actors, writers, directors all go back and forth. Audiences accept it because we're all watching so many movies on our plasmas at home. Yeah, I know, on our phones and laptops and pads, but I'm talking about the ultimate experience now can be sitting at home, pandemic and after. And you really do want to, a lot of people want to still celebrate the in theater experience, and you want to give them something to do that. But it's not such a come down to watch it again at home later, where you can pause and reflect and watch the subtitles. So what about having maybe a third rail? Maybe you have a legacy cast, and what would that be? The Kelvins? Do you do another TNG? Do you watch to see what happens with the other shows? Are we waiting for them, the other series? Are we waiting for them to get intertraditional? Here's your reward for a job well done on screen, and you totally graduate without coming back. If you've listened to me for the last 3 or 4 years, my wish list would be take short treks and put it on the big screen. Or put another way, what's wrong with anthology movies? Now, if you're building up, the old school, the Berman era, we had such a warehouse. So much stuff had been paid for and stored. They got so much bang for the buck out of their production value. And sometimes, yeah, it would show up. But now that we've got CG visual effects to complement the hardware, much less costumes and props, you've got that. Maybe you can do an anthology movie for less. But I'm talking about doing one-offs. Does every movie have to lead to a series of movies even? Does every movie have to launch a new franchise of characters? Can we just go explore one-offs? People that don't like being saddled by canon, okay, you've got the broad brush of the Star Trek universe, but if you want to do 2 or 3 or 4 movies in a series, and maybe they're not the biggest budgets, but they're still very respectable. I mean, look, Star Wars and Marvel are maybe taking the lead on this and giving us introspective movies. I know it's focusing more on series, WandaVision, She-Hulk, but is it time to graduate that over to movies? Are people only, if the philosophy is people are only stepping out of their big screens at home to go see a spectacle in theaters, well, then maybe not so. But if you bring the budget down and you bring the bar of expectations and the pressure to deliver a boffo box office, if somehow we can live in a world where that can happen, I would love to see experimental. It would almost be a throwback to the 30s and 40s, where you're cranking out movies and one of them happens to hit The Thin Man or Casablanca. You happen to hit with one, and whether it's the franchise or it's just the actors, then you turn around and you do make bigger budget vehicles out of it. But it's not necessarily the end game. I know, it's a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream. I'd love to see it on small screen too, now that we've got cinematic TV. But I would just like to see somebody with the balls and the creative juice, because the ideas are out there, all the unexplored areas of Trek. It would basically be a short Trek's blown up to movie length and budget. And maybe you have a germination tank where you put 3 or 4 or 5 ideas in. You don't announce a movie with all the pressure to make it perfect. Maybe you throw in, you've got 4, 5, 6 folks working on new idea movie scripts at once. And then you can take, not unlike germinating a pilot script, the way they did it back in 64 and 65, you put 2 or 3 or 4, you pay the writer, but you see what they come up with. You look at your TV team, which is what started to happen. You look at the team of Trek folks who would love to come in, like McKay and Patrick. You do that. You find the Trek-friendly screenwriters or people you look at your existing and wannabe talent adjacent and let them go with it And how much does it cost to write a script and develop one? You do that just like you're going to launch a series, only you're going to launch a movie series. And it can be like the old school golden age of TV. The Lucy Desi and the Kaiser Aluminum Hour. You have original productions, and if it's a series of movies, they don't have to relate to each other. Or maybe there's some clever way they do, but it's not the pressure of launching. We're going to make stars and charismatic icons out of these characters, and they're the next step in the pantheon of Star Trek. This budget and expectation of box office and the overhead of promotion and all that added cost on a movie, does that make it crazy? Or is there some way to do that? And if you want my great idea, do you have to do that as like short treks, like long treks, long anthology treks, and it has to stay on the small screen? I'm just saying, I'm just throwing it out there. Because apparently right now, there's all kinds of focus grouping and think tanking and budget shuffling going on as far as what the movie franchise is going to look like. Or maybe there have been decisions made. This story in the Hollywood Reporter from last fall, Brian Robbins and Alex Kurtzman are talking like they're really, really serious about doing Prodigy at least, but doing some of those that they've already talked about it. We're working on several fronts. And obviously, Alex is the key for the franchise on Paramount Plus. JJ's been the keeper of the franchise on the film side. Yes, what the pricey show is only launching today, meaning Prodigy, both Robbins and Kurtzman are already developing other big ideas, such as a kids and family-focused version of Prodigy that includes a feature film designed to bow theatrically, as well as other live-action features. Well, yeah, okay. That could live alongside JJ's mystery movie, or ST4. I'm just saying that, we've even made a joke. Is anybody caring? Anybody paying attention to what's happening on the movie? Or I have anyway. And occasionally I've had some of you pop in and say, I care very much. Now, whether that was about the Kelvin cast or the concept of Star Trek movies, because whenever people talk about mundane people in other franchises talk about Star Trek movies, and they always show them compared to Star Wars and the Marvels and even James Bond and, Harry Potter. It's like, it's not the point, gang. It's not the point. That's the bonus trip that Star Trek casts do. The Kelvin movies were a little bit of departure there. They were a fill-in. They were a stopgap. They were a survival tactic for those 10, 12 years when TV Star Trek wandered in the wilderness. Because the mom and the divorce to settlement took it for granted. That doesn't always have to be the case. Maybe we do develop a line of movies that are their own critter and they stand alone without being, the reward for the cast and a job well done. I don't know. Maybe if they were a series of Star Trek universe anthology movies, maybe we would start to look at them as a movie franchise on their own and comparable to the others. I don't know. Bond came from books. Harry Potter came from books. Star Wars was original. Marvel came from book comics, as did DC. I know Fast and Furious is a franchise, but I can't. Yeah. What do you guys think? I think I had no idea this was going to be my topic until about 2 a.m. I was just going to go, but I thought, sometimes when you have a crumb and a crumb and a crumb and a crumb, sometimes you suddenly have enough to recreate the cake. And I think this is when we pull, when we do it the Trekland way and pull all these crumbs together, it points up a question. I hope the restitched, remarried team that was Paramount and Viacom and etc., CBS, I hope those involved are working on a strategy, hammering it out, and we hear about it fairly soon. But if not, there's a whole lot of thinking and probably arguing and probably turf defending going on. And it's going to be fascinating to see where it comes. I don't know what you guys think. We've got the reality of the biz over here to consider. We've got what fans want. Is that even a quantifiable thing? Can we keep that from being a 5-way split of opinion? Whatever's going on, there's all kinds of things to factor in there. Right now, we're sitting in the wilderness. We don't know. It's like 2015. We don't know what we want or don't know. And a lot of what we're thinking is probably based on the last iteration. So the new war is coming, and we don't want to fight it like the last war. I meant that in the most positive way. What do you think? What do you think? Dump into the chat here. We'll see. We'll see. And while you're doing that, I, of course, want to remind everybody a thank you to our TTLers. Thank you so much for my Patreon folks. The TTLers like Diana Hopkins, Lawrence Todd, Keith Rombach, Blaze K, Robin Wilson, and Marie Siegel, Justin Porteous, Nathaniel Robinson, Andrew Jazimski, and Pranakasha Productions. And, of course, our live wires, guys, Rusty Harold, Heber Gun Johnson, Robert McLean, Alan Hoensi, J.R. Poole, Byron Bailey, Dave Gregory, Gay Clevin Lundstrom, and Casey Shafsky. You wonder what I'm talking about with Patreon? It's a way you can support creatives' one-off projects or subscriptions. I have a very simple subscription, $5 and $10. We're slowly growing Trekland streaming. Yay. It's at patreon.com/Trekland Live. We're actually finally going to get those old interviews available from Portal 47 out for everybody. We are going to get there. Hey, I also want to remind everybody that the Trek Files is up today, the new week, episode 201. Last week was number 200. And this week with a voice I'm sure you've not heard. She's done one podcast, maybe a few years ago. Hannah Louise Shearer, that I was very excited to see her name when I was a kid watching Next Generation because it looked like a sign of things to come. She was only there a half season. She recurred, though. She has a lot of fascinating things to say about first season chaos on the bridge, TNG, and even afterward. So check out the Trek Files at facebook.com/the Trek Files or wherever you get your podcasts of the week. We have the homework. We have the documents. The actual Trek file is on our Facebook page, of course, actually. Once again, be thinking about this. Check it out. You can go to LarryNemecek.com or GeekNationTours.com. The big 10-day, 10-night LA, San Francisco location tours, our West Coast away mission next July with guests. And these are the first folks out of the back. Mike Westmore, Tim Russ, Armin Shimmerman, and Bobby Clark. They're different one-day guests. We're going to be announcing more, and especially by the beginning of the year, you want to be in on that. And you know what? Whether you're coming to the cruise officially out of LA or not, if you just want to come by, you are welcome to jump in on these one-day day tours, these LA away missions, I call it, when I plan your Trekland Trek for you. So we're going to have buses. We can have up to 18 people the Thursday before, the Saturday after you embark in and out of the cruise. And you're welcome to jump up. We'll leave in Hollywood. Okay, that's on my site, LarryNemecek.com. You can get to the link for that too. February and March, yada yada, and we end with just keep watching. Just keep watching. I got to talk about it. So you're all whetted. We'll soon have an advance registration, a little sign up just so I know who's coming, because we're gonna have giveaways, and we want to have giveaways. We want to know who's there so we can do the giveaways, including a Picard Season 2 and a Lower Deck Season 3 DVD set among the giveaway prizes, the door prizes. So you want to jump over and wait for me to tell you the official page is signed up, but that should happen within the week, okay? If you're watching me right now later on YouTube, well, sorry we missed you live. Jump in if you can sometime. But you know what? You can leave a comment right now just as easily as our chat folks left them live. Please do that. And as we leave you now, if we are, just a reminder, guys, the guys, gals, and peeps, stay healthy, do all the things, even if that means get your flu shot for this season. I know, but COVID's still hanging around. It's lame. I have a pregnant person in my circle, and she is terrified that she's going to get COVID, even though she had it a few months ago, and is loath to take the vaccination at this point. So, there's still folks out there to think about. Oh my God, and please stay woke. And I'm not making fun of the term at all. Stay woke to me means stay awake. And that means stay awake to even what you don't know about. So yes, check the sources. Might be some new information. Might be somebody just BSing you. Are they real? And is what they're saying real? Because it's the thick and fast season right now in the States. We're 3 weeks out from the elections. As always, all I'm trying to say, folks, is Trek well.